Hello. Thank you for joining me for this webinar. This is a presentation that I originally put together for some of my life story writing students and memoir clients who were in process of writing a book and beginning to think about the next phase, the post-writing phase of their book, how they were going to publish, where they were going to publish, whether they should self-publish, and how they should start to begin thinking about marketing. I'm hoping that this will be helpful for others. It would primarily be helpful for people who are in one of those categories, perhaps midway through a book, nearing the end of the writing of a book, and curious about the basics of publishing. I'm going to start by saying, reading you this quote. People need to hear information multiple times in order to absorb it fully. Repetition is key to learning. And I put this at the top because it would have helped ease my anxiety a little bit when I first started learning about the ins and outs of publishing. It can be pretty overwhelming at first if it's a topic that's totally new to you. Writers get pretty comfortable with their writing life. The publishing world is really different from the writing life. I had a memoir traditionally published about 16 years ago. I was familiar with that process. I had a great experience with that, in fact. But with a book that I just recently published and another one that I'll be publishing next summer, I decided to go down the self-publishing path. And that required me to develop a broader understanding of publishing in general in order to be able to make good decisions on my self-publishing journey. And as I began to learn more about the publishing world in general, I felt really overwhelmed. It was kind of unbelievable to me that I'd been in publishing and media for so long and I had so much to learn. But really, I just needed to hear the same things about 10 or 12 times, and then they sunk in. Repetition was key to learning, and it will be to you too. If you feel overwhelmed during this presentation, it's likely because you are hearing, this is the first hearing of some of these facts and details about the publishing world. Try to relax with it. Try to remain curious, because while the writing life can be so fulfilling spiritually, so can the publishing. The publishing life can also be fulfilling and exciting. I'm here for you in this presentation and also beyond. If you still have questions, if you need someone to guide you along the way a little bit, you can always reach me at hello@sarahrowan.com. I love talking about books. I love helping people think about their books. So let's start by just outlining the various ways to publish, and I'll first define the term. Book publishing is the process of getting your manuscript to your reader by turning it into a book and then selling it and distributing it, or distributing it and selling it. And this is true whether we're talking about print books or ebooks. Here are the different branches of publishing: traditional publishing, hybrid publishing, publishing with a vanity press, self-publishing, and then publishing or printing for friends and loved ones and yourself. I'm tacking that on there because I teach life story writing, and many of my students and life story writing clients are looking to publish primarily for their family, friends, and loved ones, and trying to decide whether publishing on a print on demand platform like Amazon is something they should pursue, or if sort of a more private avenue would be more beneficial to them. So we'll talk about that a little bit tonight. By the way, they wind up doing both things. Some people decide that it would be lovely to have their book available on Amazon, and some people decide that is not for them at all. I get a lot of questions from students and clients. Right away, they want to know about royalty rates. So I'll get that out of the way right up front. In traditional publishing, which we'll define that term in more detail in a couple of slides. The royalties, this is a generalization, but in general, royalty rates for hardcover traditionally published books, the author earns 10 to 15%, paperback 5 to 7.5%, and ebook 25%. I'll say that if an author earns an advance for their book, their traditionally published book, which means that the publisher pays them money upon the signing of a contract. So the publisher is purchasing the rights to publish that book. Almost always, the author then needs to what's called earn out their advance. And so until their book makes enough money to cover their advance, they don't earn any royalties. So let's say Simon and Schuster paid you a $50,000 advance when you signed a contract with them. Very likely you would get half of that upon signing the contract, half when you turn in the book, and you wouldn't make any royalties until your book made $50,000. There's hybrid publishing. Royalty rates vary widely with hybrid publishing. We'll talk about that model of publishing down the line. It's almost impossible to put a number on that. I mean, there are hybrid publishers that pay 70% royalties, and there are other hybrid publishers that strike a deal to pay authors, $1, $2 a book. So it's really hard to pin down. You need to shop around for that. Self-published authors, authors who publish, for example, on Amazon Kindle or Kindle Direct Publishing, Ingram Spark. Those are the two platforms that I have published on. You get somewhere between 40 and 60% royalty rate. So let's talk a little bit about what to expect with traditional publishing. With traditional publishing, you can expect, of course this varies, but that it will take about 2 years for your book to be published. And that clock often starts ticking when you sign a contract with a traditional publishing house, not necessarily when your book is completed. Sometimes it takes a lot shorter than that, and sometimes it takes longer. I think it's a good idea to plan on 2 years. I know it sounds like a really long time. In my experience, when I published my traditionally published memoir, which is called Gumbo Tales, Finding My Place at the New Orleans Table with W.W. Norton, that was right on target. It was just about exactly 2 years after I signed the contract. You can expect that editing, design, and distribution are completely taken care of for you, which is wonderful. Those elements of the publishing process are also largely out of the author's control. You may get some help with marketing, but especially if you're a first-time author, don't count on a lot of it. Consider yourself the head of your marketing team. It's very likely that if you publish with a large traditional publisher, you'll have somebody assigned to helping you market and publicize your book, but that won't last forever. That'll just be at the beginning and, in the first year that your book is published, unless you're, a huge name. And after that, it's pretty much up to you. Traditional publishing costs the author nothing. And as I explained earlier, royalties are earned after your advance has earned out. You've earned out your advance. So there are a few different types of traditional publishing houses. There's the big five. If you haven't heard that term before, you'll hear that again as you pursue getting your own book published. So there are actually more than 5 publishing houses that fall under this umbrella, although, probably maybe around 20. So those are the biggest names in publishing. I give some examples here: Penguin Random House, HarperCollins. Most of the books at, your local Barnes and Noble will be published by big 5 publishing houses. Authors can pretty much depend on earning in advance when they publish with a big 5 publishing house. They can also rely on A to Z of book production and distribution being taken care of. There are small and mid-sized traditional publishing houses. The quality of the product really varies. So it's important to, look into other, if you're looking at a small or mid-sized publishing house, check out the other books that they've published. Make sure that they're up to your standards, in advance as possible. A to Z is taken care of with small and mid-sized traditional publishers, although I wrote on this slide that A to Z is taken care of sometimes with author support. I'm currently working with a client who is publishing his book with a well-respected small publisher, and my client has really been responsible for my client has high standards, fortunately, and he has had to pay for his own copy editing and proofreading, even though technically the publishing house is taking care of those details from him. It has not really been a very quality job. And so he's taken it upon himself to hire some outside editors and editor and proofreader. So just keep that in mind. I don't want to be cynical about small and mid-sized publishers. Certainly, there are many, many great ones. But keep in mind that you might not want to just wash your hands of your manuscript once you turn it over. Some examples of really well-run small and mid-sized publishers that make beautiful books: Red Hen Press, which is based in California, and Gray Wolf, which is in Minnesota. If you'd like to look at a couple of examples, check out their websites. They make beautiful books. So they're academic presses. And I think that it's easy to overlook the possibilities in academic publishing. It's likely that you won't get a very big advance, but there are academic presses publishing really wonderful books, and they often have a real point of view. It probably is most beneficial to look at academic presses in your own area to start looking there, but there are academic presses that publish authors that have nothing to do with the region where they're located. I put some examples here. UNO Press, University of New Orleans Press, very impressed with the books that they're publishing these days. University of New Mexico Press has a really large emphasis on regional books, and they do a great job. If your book is scholarly, research-based, or somehow educational, I think an academic press is a really, really good thing to look into. And then there are indie publishers, and the difference between independent publishers and small and mid-sized publishers sometimes isn't apparent from the outside, but the business model can be a little bit different. And they also tend to have like a much narrower point of view or niche product. I put as an example Unruly, which makes picture books for adults. Really beautiful picture books. Coffee House Press is based in Minnesota and is a nonprofit. An advance is possible. If your book is like very niche or very specific genre or regional, look at those indie publishers. So now we're moving on to hybrid publishing. So hybrid is a word that's used in publishing in so many different ways and sometimes confusingly. But hybrid publishing is sometimes also referred to as author-assisted publishing, co-publishing, custom publishing, or partnership publishing. Hybrid presses, there are some super high quality hybrid publishers. The difference between traditional and hybrid publishing is the main difference is that the author and the publisher share the publishing costs. Authors also tend to get higher royalty rates because they're investing their own money in the publishing process. They then earn more higher royalties on the other side. It's similar to traditional publishing in that a hybrid publisher handles the editing, design, distribution, and sales, and likely also some marketing. And so you're paying for services. Um, Definitely behooves the author to do their research and make sure that they are choosing a reputable hybrid publisher, that's going to do a good job with the editing, the design, the distribution, and the sales. But there's some great ones out there. Here are some reputable hybrid publishers. This is just a handful. There are many, many more out there. Greenleaf, Kohler, Mascot, She Writes Press, Austin McCulley. Hybrid publishing offers a range of models. It's really, I'm not even going to try to give you a price range because it differs widely. So, with varying degrees of author control, varying degrees of cost to the author. So, do your research and find one that aligns with your, the budget that you are working with and your publishing goals. I've compiled a resources for authors page that I would be happy to email you. I'll have my email at the end of this presentation, but I have some tips for where to look for listings of hybrid publishers on that page. Now, vanity publishing. When I was first starting out in publishing, 16 years ago, it was longer ago than that, let's say 18, 20 years ago, when I was beginning to think about my book, Gumbo Tales, if somebody talked about vanity publishing, they were talking about a self-published author who was contracting with paying a printing press to print their book. And then that author would have to buy the couple thousand books that they thought they might be able to eventually sell, warehouse them in their basement under their bed, and sell them themselves. It was a really big investment for authors, and I guess the assumption was you would only go to those lengths for a vanity project. I actually know a couple people who self-published back then, and they self-published books that I wouldn't call necessarily vanity projects. They were important books. But these days, a vanity press refers to something that tends to look a lot like a hybrid publisher, except that the fees are exorbitant, the work is subpar, they're constantly trying to upsell the author on more editing, more design, more this, more that, and making unrealistic promises about how far a reach their book will get, what kind of marketing they'll help with. It can be difficult to figure out whether you're looking at a hybrid press or a vanity press and whether or not you're getting taken advantage of as an author. Authors are vulnerable. We have big dreams for our writing and for our books. And unfortunately, there are companies out there taking advantage of that vulnerability. Here are a couple of ways to make sure that you don't get taken advantage of by a predatory vanity press. One, there is an angel of the publishing world that maintains a website called Writer Beware. This is on my author's resources page, but you could also, search that and you'll find it. And you can plug in the name of a press that you're looking at, and it will let you know if there are red flags. if authors have been complaining about having been taken advantage of by that press. Also, I would recommend the people in my life who I know who have been taken advantage of by vanity presses have fallen into the trap of believing that if they paid for a publishing deal before they finished writing their book, that would be the motivation that would get them to finally finish writing their book. I know a couple of people who've paid thousands of dollars to vanity presses and who still haven't finished their book. That is not that is not a recommended way to motivate yourself to finish your book. So finish writing before you pay for services. Another good way to make sure that you will make wise decisions. When you are purchasing service packages, and there are plenty of um, authors assistants, publishing service companies, and hybrid presses that are selling publishing packages that are worth your money. But when you're purchasing them, investigate who will be doing the work. Make sure that it's not the same person doing the developmental editing, the copy editing, and the proofread. And definitely make sure that that quote unquote person isn't all AI or an unpaid intern. Investigate, ask lots of questions. And if people are evasive, I would take that as a red flag. And always read your contract thoroughly. If you don't understand your contract, pay a lawyer an hourly fee to help you understand the contract. So now to self-publishing. Like I said, I just self-published one book, which is called How to Begin Writing Your Life Stories, Putting Memories on the Page. And I'm in process of self-publishing a second book, which is called Memories on the Page, A Year of Tips and Prompts for Memoir and Life Story Writers. I have some items here, some reasons that an author might decide to self-publish. I'll say that I checked all of these boxes with the two books that I'm self-publishing, just how I know these to be true. Number one, it's your last resort. Attempts to get an agent or a traditional publishing deal have failed. That was not exactly true for me because I ran my book ideas by my agent, and he told me why he wasn't interested in the agent that helped me with Gumbo Tales. He told me why he wasn't interested in representing them. And he gave me lots of tips for places where I might look myself to get them published. And in the process of absorbing that information, I realized that self-publishing would probably be the wisest thing for me for the following reasons. Control. When you want to make all of your own publishing decisions. I had to make some real I don't want to say sacrifices, but there were a lot of things that I didn't get to decide about Gumbo Tales, and that was fine because I was a young writer at the time. I didn't know how to make decisions, correct decisions back then, but I feel pretty certain that I know how to make the correct decisions about things like the cover design of the two books that I'm self-publishing, exactly the structure that they should, the form that they should take, the timeline of when they should be published, the title. These are all things that were out of my control with Gumbo Tales. And I decided that control was important to me with these two things. Part of the reason control was important to me with these next two books is that they are extensions of my business as a life story writing teacher, a life story and memoir coach. And so I have like a pretty specific audience for those books, and a narrow audience is another reason why somebody might decide to self-publish when your book is an extension of a business or will be sold mostly through direct sales. I believe that the two books that I'm self-publishing will be sold mostly because I will be selling them. And another good reason to self-publish timing when you want to publish a book quickly or on your own timeline. That was really important to me, although I will say that the learning curve for self-publishing was so steep that it is taking me 2 years to get these 2 books out. So timing was important. Hasn't totally worked out to make things go any more quickly. And then cost. So I could have gone with a hybrid publisher. I'm sure I could have found a hybrid publisher for those books, but hybrid publishers are more expensive than totally DIYing it, which is what I'm doing in the self-publishing of these 2 books, and I just didn't have the budget for that. And then for the fun of it, when an author's excited to learn new skills, which I was. Weighing the benefits of self-publishing. So here are some pros and cons of self-publishing. You might notice that the first item in the pro column is also the first item in the con column. You make all the decisions about your book in perpetuity. It's great to have that kind of control if you want it. That's also the con. It's up to you to make the right decisions about your book in perpetuity. Another item in the pro column, you direct the life of the book, including corrections, subsequent editions, and formats. I'll just give you an example. With Gumbo Tales, there was a time when I really wanted to publish a second edition with an extra chapter. My publisher's not interested in that. My book has been the little engine that continues to sell, but not enough for them to invest money in a second edition and everything that would go into basically redoing the book. There also does not exist an audiobook for Gumbo Tales, and my publisher owns the rights to the audiobook. Could I get the rights? Yes, I could. But my agent doesn't get paid enough from the sales of that book to really go to bat for me. It would be a very long and involved process. So I'm kind of stuck with that one, and it's fine. I'm grateful. I'm so grateful to have been able to publish the book the way that I did. But, I want more control. I want to direct the life of the 2 books that I'm currently self-publishing. You also control the quality, which might scare some people. I like that. I'm an editor as well as a writer. I have pretty high standards for editing, and I'm happy to. I'm not editing my own work, but I am choosing who is editing my work. So in the con column, you pay for every part of book production. It's a big con when you self-publish. You manage distribution or pay to outsource distribution of your book. This is part of self-publishing that I am still wrapping my mind around. It's a little bit overwhelming to me, and something that you have to deal with when you are a self-published author. There may be some self-published authors who don't find that to be a con, but that's one of my hurdles, so I put it in the con column. So self-publishing is a DIY project, absolutely, but you don't need to do it all alone. There are editors, author assistants, book producers, book shepherds, and publishing services companies that can help for a fee. I offer some publishing services. Be happy to talk to you about those if you find that you need them and are looking around for somebody to help you. Here are some of the elements of self-publishing that you can hire out. I have either collaborated with somebody or hired out most of these services for my own books. Cover design, interior formatting, distribution management. That's one that I'm still doing on my own. I have a collaborator who's helping me with cover design and interior formatting, marketing and publicity, editing. So far, I'm doing my own marketing and publicity. I'm hiring out editing and proofreading. I also am engaging with beta readers. That's not in this grid. but that's another element that can be really helpful, is to get beta readers to help you find where your work doesn't flow, where something doesn't completely work for a reader. Metadata and uploading. The metadata of your book is like all of the information about your book that isn't necessarily in the text of your book. It's like the categories that your book falls under on Amazon, for example, or on Ingram Spark, the description of your book, the about the author information, everything that's sort of like running in the background, the uploading to the print on demand platforms, and indexing, which of course is optional, but a lot of nonfiction books benefit from indexes, including mine. So let's talk about agents. Do you need an agent? If you're going with a big five publishing house, if that's what you're angling for, yes, you need an agent. Most big five publishing houses won't engage with authors. They'll only engage with agents. If you are hybrid publishing or self-publishing, you do not need an agent. And then in between those two is a lot of gray area. If you are angling for a very well-respected small publisher that puts out books that get a lot of attention, you may need an agent. If you're going for like really small indie academic presses, you probably don't need an agent. You could still get one if you want the help and you're willing to give a percentage of your royalties. 10% is a good number to count on. You can still get an agent even if you don't need one. But one way to figure it out is find, if you're looking for small indie academic presses, look for the submission guidelines on the website of those publishers and see what they require. They may require a book proposal, some version of a book proposal and some sample chapters, and that's it. And you can send that to them on your own. They'll probably tell you if they require an agent to contact them. I've found that it can be hard on some publishing websites to find the submission guidelines. It's not because they don't exist. If you can't find the submission guidelines on a publisher's website, Google or otherwise search the name of that publishing house and the words submission guidelines, and you'll find the page. You'll find that buried page. If you're looking for an agent, you'll be sending probably a lot of agents query letters. And when I first put this presentation together, I had a couple of people who wanted me to address sending agents query letters. And so I just will do that very briefly. This is not a how to write a query letter talk, but two main points I'd like you to keep in mind. Number one, make it personal. Don't write one version of a query letter and send it to every agent and publishing house that you think you might want to work with. Write a boilerplate query letter, and then every time you send it out, make it personal to whoever you're sending it to. Find the reason that you're attracted to a particular agent or publishing house, why that agent or publishing house would be a good fit for you in your book, and state that in your query letter. If it isn't personal, it's really unlikely that somebody is going to take the time to figure out on their own why you're a good fit. Number two, don't make any mistakes in your query letter. A mistake in grammar or spelling or confusing language is going to put your query letter in the trash bin, no matter how great your book idea is. So use editing tools, hire an editor, whatever you need to do. No mistakes. This slide is for people who are working on projects, life story writing projects, primarily for family and friends, for themselves. If you aren't interested in having your book be as prominent as it would be if you did a print on demand service like Amazon, Kindle Direct Publishing, and or if you have a book in which you would like to print lots of color photos. I have several life story writing students who are working on projects like that. They have lots of photos they want to put with their stories. Lulu.com is probably the best place for you to get print on demand books. And by print on demand, I mean that you don't have to order the 500 or the 50 that you think that your family and friends might like. You can order them one by one when you make a book on lulu.com, or your family can order them for themselves. They make really high quality books, and photos reproduce beautifully. So I plugged in some numbers to sort of show you what it would cost to put together a life story writing book with photos. On the left-hand side, it's a 350 page book, pretty long book, in premium color, glossy finish to the pages, hardcover, US trade size, which is 6x9, would cost $50.09 per book, which is pretty steep. But if you're putting together a keepsake for a small number of people, that might be worth it to you. I cut down on the cost a lot by making that a paperback book. Then it went down to $16.02. So they have a great, really easy to use calculator on lulu.com. Check that out. Defining the term print on demand. So print on demand is another term that if you're not familiar with it, you'll hear it again and again as you think about how to publish your book. But that refers to books that aren't printed until they're purchased. So that's what happens when you print through Kindle Direct Publishing and or Ingram Spark. Those are print on demand services. So just briefly, the difference, I've published the books that I'm self-publishing on both of those platforms. Kindle Direct Publishing books can be sold on Amazon, and authors can also order their own copies at an author price from KDP and then sell them themselves. But you can't really sell books that you publish through Kindle Direct Publishing in any other way. Bookstores won't buy them, libraries won't buy them. If you want your book available for purchase, like on your website, for example, or if you want libraries and booksellers to be able to purchase them in any, not directly from you, but from a catalog, Ingram Spark is the place to publish your book. They will find you're findable through Ingram Spark if you publish on that platform. Now, there's no charge for publishing to either KDP or Ingram Spark. There's no charge to the author. The companies take a percentage of book sales. That's how they get paid. A little bit about print on demand pricing. There are lots of factors that determine the cost of printing your book through Amazon, Kindle Direct Publishing, and Ingram Spark. Both of those platforms have their own calculators and their own pages that allow you to try to figure out what the cost of printing your book will be, determined by trim size, which is the dimensions of the book, page count, photos, whether you're printing on the interior color or just black and white. Ingram Spark lets you choose paper quality. Amazon KDP goes with one quality of paper. Ingram, if you choose higher quality paper on Ingram, the books are a lot prettier, but they also cost more. And then also whatever royalty decision you make with them will affect the pricing of your book. The cost calculators for both KDP and Ingram Spark are very confusing. Show you. This is the book that I just recently self-published. It's a 100-page book. I mean, here it says 102 pages. It's small. It's smaller than a trade paperback. It's so small that it doesn't have even writing on the spine. I knew that I wanted it to cost $9.99 because I did a lot of research into my book comps, and I knew that if I priced it higher than that, I would not be competitive. And so I made it work. I made all the decisions about the length, the trim size, the paper, the black and white that would allow me to price it at $9.99 and still make some money. It's a business decision for me to publish this book. And so it's part of my business. It's not the only way that I'm making money. And so I wasn't too concerned about making tons of money per book. When I publish it on Ingram, I chose a higher paper quality because I really like how it looks with the higher paper quality, and that's where I'm ordering my author copies for books that I'm selling directly. And but if a library or a bookseller were to order my book from Ingram, I would make $2.36 out of that $9.99. On KDP, where the paper quality isn't quite as high and the royalty rate is a little bit higher, I'm making $3.69 on every purchase. So you can I put this in here so you can just sort of see what it looks like when you're interacting with these platforms. Now, which path is best for your book? How do you figure this out? If you've just started thinking about these topics, it's likely that you're pretty overwhelmed by this point in the presentation. You have to decide, every author has to decide for themselves. We have an abundance of choices. But my advice is to follow your dreams. What is your greatest dream for your book? Start there. Start there. If your greatest dream for your book is to publish with Penguin Random House and get on the New York Times bestsellers list, start there. But be ready to pivot. Have plan B, have plan C. Don't let plan A peter out and then you give up because you believe that it petered out because it wasn't meant to be, or your book is awful, or clearly you weren't cut out to be an author. No. Rejections, you need to prepare for rejection. A rejection does not mean no, not ever. Your book is terrible. Rejection means no, not here, not now. Even self-published authors need to prepare for rejection, not necessarily, of course, not the rejection of a publisher or of an agent, but there are a lot of obstacles on the way to self-publishing, and you need to really be prepared for pivot down that pathway as well. So prepare for reach for the stars, prepare for rejection, just accept it as part of the deal, be persistent. Looking for an agent and or a publisher is a long game. You are in it for the long game. Be persistent. If you're self-publishing, persistence is the only way you'll get through. And be methodical. Whether you are deciding to try to traditionally publish first or to go straight to self-publishing, one step at a time. If you are in search of an agent or in search of a publisher, the going number, this does not come originally from me. The sort of going number in the industry is be prepared to send 100 query letters. You might as well make a spreadsheet right now and don't give up on plan A until you've reached 100. I think if you've sent out 100 query letters and you haven't gotten any traction, then it's time to go to plan B. So being methodical in self-publishing is also beneficial, because otherwise you'll sit down every morning and decide which of the 200 things to do. Pick one, get it done, move on to two. So now we're going to transition into talking a little bit about marketing, the beginning of book marketing. I have a photo, a graphic of a pregnant woman here holding a bunch of books. Books are often compared to babies with good reason. It feels like a book is creation. It's a gestation. The writing of a book is a gestation. The release of a book is a birth. It feels a lot like that. And then your book needs a lot of care and feeding after it's out in the world. So at a certain point, I write here, authors who hope to connect with readers need to look beyond the creative process, beyond the gestation, to the practical aspects of having a book baby in the world. I don't want you to feel like you need to put the marketing horse before the writing cart. So if you're still really deep into the writing of your book, don't get in the weeds with marketing. This is not the time to decide that you need to, make a TikTok every morning. But there are two actions you can take right now, wherever you are in the process of writing your book. Number one, write a book proposal. Most agents and publishers require a book proposal. I say most because maybe there are exceptions. I haven't heard of them. My agent requires one. He won't even, I've wanted to send clients to him. I've wanted to talk about client books with him. He's not interested in considering a book or an author without a book proposal. Writing a book proposal shows that you're serious about writing your book. It shows that you've thought beyond the writing of your book, where it fits in the marketplace, who your audience is, how you might promote it later. You don't need, no one's going to check whether you have a book proposal if you're self-publishing, although I have written a book proposal for the book that I'm self-publishing because I believe in the process of writing a book proposal. It's an amazing focusing tool. It really makes an author narrow in on who their audience is, who their ideal reader is. Of course, we all want our books to be accessible and read by everyone, but we should have sort of an ideal reader in mind or ideal readers in mind while we're writing. Book proposal really helps with that. Writing my book proposal for my larger book aimed at memoir and life story writers, before I was finished writing that book, really affected how I finished writing that book in a very positive way. And the bonus is that when you write a book proposal, you wind up writing a lot of content that you will use down the line. In writing my book proposal, I wrote the description that is going to be my Amazon book description. I wrote an about the author section that wound up replacing on my author website what I'd had there before because it was better. I wrote part of the book, a nonfiction book proposal is marketing plan, and it motivated me to start taking action so that my marketing plan would work. I can't encourage it enough, even for authors who intend to self-publish. You will not regret it, and you will use that content later. Second action you can take right now is make an author website. Sure, a lot of authors interact with readers and grow their readership on social media, but not every reader's on social media. I personally have many friends who don't interact on social media. You want those readers to have a place to find you. It doesn't have to be an extensive author website. It can be just a landing page. But get that up. Get that up now. When you meet somebody on the plane next week and you mention to them that you're writing a book and they think your book sounds really cool, they want to be able to remember you. They're much more likely to remember you if they have a place to find you. So, a little bit more about book proposals. Here are the elements of a nonfiction book proposal: title and subtitle, obviously, author contact information, an overview of the book. This is super helpful to have. You'll use it again and again. And about the author section, which you will also use again and again. Your platform, by which I mean social media statistics, but even more broad than that, like any way that you interact with a community or have any kind of audience. Marketing and promotion plans, who the audience for your book is, comparable book titles, doing your book comps, perhaps especially as a self-published author, will really help you make the right decisions, the right publishing decisions later on. How to price your book, how to title your book, what the cover should look like. It's an invaluable exercise, and a book proposal will make you do it. Your manuscript length, how long it will take you to deliver your manuscript, the table of contents, a chapter overview or synopsis, and sample chapters. I have a book proposal template that I've made for myself and clients, and I'd be happy to share that with you. It's a Word document. It has, you know, these sections as headings, and then with some description and a little bit of direction to help you get started. When you're sending out a book proposal, check the submission guidelines for what agents and publishers want exactly, because some are very specific. So when you make, let's say you use my template, you'll have a book proposal that you might have to rework and rewrite again and again as you send it out to different people. But I don't want to say rewrite. Probably won't have to do a lot of writing, but you might do some reorganizing. So regarding websites, if you have it in you to learn a new skill, I highly recommend that you build your own website, unless you think that all you'll ever have is a landing page that will just stay the same in perpetuity. Having the knowledge and the skill to be able to work on your website over time is invaluable. If you're going to blog, you'll want that skill because you want control of your blog. I am constantly adding to, reworking, tweaking my about the author section as I change and acquire more skills and more experience. I have three books on my website: Gumbo Tales, my life story writing, my How to Begin Writing Your Life Stories, and I co-edited a cookbook for the Southern Foodways Alliance. Those three books are on my website, and I recently rewrote the descriptions of those books. I just realized what was up there was stale and could be a lot more exciting. And because I have control of my own website and built it, I know how to go in there and do that. If you have now, I may not have the most professional looking website. That's true. There may come a time when I decide to professionalize it, but I'm not there yet. It's still in flux. And if you have somebody else build your website and you don't know how to work with it, every time you want to make a little change, you're going to have to beg that person or that company to go in and make a little change. And they're very unlikely to pay attention to you if for little changes. It's not really worth somebody else's time to go and just tweak one paragraph and then go through the trouble of invoicing you. So, there might be web designers that work on a sort of retainer system or subscription system, or I don't know. You might find somebody who works in a way financially where you have a little bit more access to them. But I'll just say, I use Squarespace. A lot of authors use WordPress. When I was deciding between the two, Squarespace looked simpler to me, and it is not too hard. I'm not super techy. They have lots of videos to help you. Wix is a straightforward program that I know a lot of authors are happy with. So I think that Wix is also priced a little bit lower than Squarespace and WordPress. So check that out. If you would like to hire someone, I recommend hiring somebody who specializes in author websites. I've seen some author websites that aren't really clear that what they're marketing is an author and books. And I recommend hiring somebody who specializes in that. And I wrote at the end of this slide, at the bottom of this slide, I recommended that you look at the membership of the Editorial Freelancers Association, which is a organization I belong to, and there are author website developers in that database. So I think if you have one marketing goal for your book in its pre-publication stage, that should be to begin to interact with your future readers. There's so many ways to do this, but that's your number one goal. Ask yourself, who's the target audience for my book and where do they hang out? And then once you determine where your audience hangs out, this is important, find a comfortable and sustainable way to engage in those spaces. So I use TikTok as an example a lot because that is really not an area that is comfortable for me. And so my comfortable and sustainable way to engage with my audience is not going to start at TikTok. Try not to do the equivalent of, it's January 1st, I'm going to jog 3 miles every day, even though I hate jogging and have never tried. So never tried to, run 3 miles a day. Like, try to start where you're comfortable. That doesn't mean you won't be stretching yourself. You don't have to completely stay in your comfort zone, but make it something that you can actually pull off. So here are a few examples. Join or start private Facebook group in your genre, in your topic, area of expertise or topic. Join or start a club, either in real life or virtual. See if you can publish any articles, essays, or advice, either related to the topic of your book or not. Let's say you're writing a straight memoir. You're writing about yourself. You're, maybe writing about, like one element of your upbringing that's interesting, but doesn't necessarily lend itself to lots of articles, essays, or advice that you could pitch to newspapers, magazines, trade publications. Write about something else. Write about another passion that you have. Write about woodworking. What lights your fire? If you can write about something in an engaging way, some of your readers will want more, and they will make a note and pay attention to you. They'll sign up for your newsletter, which is another way that you can begin to build an audience and engage with your future readers. Link to a newsletter on your homepage of your website. I send out 2 newsletters. I send out the same newsletter in 2 different ways. One, people can sign up through Squarespace, through my website, or I also send the same newsletter on Substack. And I have found, for me personally, readers find me in both of those spaces kind of in equal numbers. That's why I continue to do it on both of those platforms. MailChimp, MailerLite, those are some other common ways that people start newsletters. If you're a video person, BookTok and BookTube are very popular. A lot of authors have had a lot of luck. I don't have personal experience. Consider the places where you already hang out. Like, how can you start establishing yourself as someone who has something to say in those spaces? I don't know. Maybe you write the newsletter for your HOA. Maybe you expand your book club. You have a book club and you somehow expand it in a way that grows your audience. You take it to your local library and you become the author who spearheaded a community book club. Get creative. So wherever you interact with your audience, begin to softly establish yourself as an expert in your book topic or just an interesting person. You never know, your interactions may even help you shape your book in some unforeseen way. This next slide, I talk a little bit about pre-publishing portions of your book, excerpts from your book before your book is published. And I included this because a couple of people have asked me about the wisdom in that. I'll say 2 things. Number 1, a blog or a newsletter can be a great place to workshop material that will eventually become a book. I did that. I published sections of sections of both of the books that I'm self-publishing have been previously published on my personal blog. And I did that because I wanted to see what it felt like to have that information in the world, like the energy of it, how it felt to me mostly. I can tell you that I don't know how many people read those blog posts. It could have only been a couple hundred. I didn't get a lot of feedback. I didn't get a lot of reader comments. Even so, I learned what I liked and what I didn't like about those portions of my book by just having them in the world, out off of my laptop and in the world. Now that they are becoming portions of books that are, one of them is already published and one is soon to be published, those pieces are no longer on my blog. I don't want half of my book accessible for free on my blog when I'm trying to sell a book containing that information. You definitely don't want portions of your book on your blog or accessible online or in someone else's publication if you're trying to sell your book to a publishing house. Don't do that. Don't publish excerpts of your not yet published book if you are trying to sell your book to a traditional publisher. You're self-publishing, my advice is not hard and fast, but I think you're really limiting your options and likely to turn off publishers if large portions of your book have already been published someplace else. So the exceptions are poetry and collections of essays. Lots of poetry. I mean, you see poetry books that contain poems that were published all over the place: magazines, literary journals, blogs, online publications. Same with essay collections. So my advice doesn't apply to those. But if you're writing a nonfiction book or a memoir, hold off on publication of excerpts of those books until your book is published. Write about other things in the articles that you publish to try to, gain readership. I thought I should put this in here in case it wasn't obvious. But I do see a lot of authors, even like really famous authors, that just post what seem to be bot generated content. And I don't understand how a reader would be attracted to that as a way to indicate that a book would be interesting. Social media posting into the void will not build you an audience. Personal social media posting, social media posting with a point of view, with personality, with charisma, with something to say, yes. Social media posting for the sake of posting something because you think if you're an author, you need to be visible every day, no matter what that visibility, the quality of that visibility, don't do it. So when you're deciding how and where to interact with your audience before your book is published, or even after your book is published, actually become a student of the kind of content you like to consume. That is a really good way to figure out how you can develop a comfortable and sustainable way to market yourself and to market your own book, is figure out what you like. Figure out what voices you're attracted to. What style of marketing works on you, and mimic that. So follow authors and influencers in your genre or field on social media, subscribe to their newsletters, either authors, influencers, or businesses. And even if they aren't in your field, I get a lot of tips. I'm super interested in cooking and restaurant culture. And I learn a lot from how chefs and cooks market themselves. I'm not marketing myself as a chef or a cook, though I do cook a mean gumbo. Like to take me up on that, email me. But you can learn from people who are good at marketing in general, like what speaks to you. Another thing, attend webinars, virtual summits, conferences. You can pay for them. If you can pay for the really good ones, go to those. But lots of free advice, marketing advice, and content exists on the web. Find the people you're interested in and see what they're offering. It's likely that they're speaking at a virtual summit. They're offering webinars. They're speaking at conferences. Just observe how other people who you admire communicate their message or their product or their brand, and see how you can incorporate that into your own marketing life. That's it. Thanks for listening. Like I said earlier, I have lots of links and websites on a resources for authors page. I'd love to share that with you. If you'd like that, email me at hello@sararohen.com, SARAROAHEN, and I will send that off to you. Good luck with your book. You can do it.